I heard this parable on Catholic Relevant Radio some years ago, and I knew I was going to use it in a homily, and today's the day. A Catholic once visited a farmer with the intention of inviting him to attend Sunday Mass. And the farmer said, "Oh, I wouldn't bother going to that church. I know some of its members who claim to be good Catholics, but they don't live any differently than I do. I'm as good as they are." And in the coming weeks, everywhere the farmer went, he talked about the invitation and all the hypocrites he knew who attended that church. And months passed, and the Catholic gentleman went back to see the farmer again. He said, "I'd like to buy a hog." The farmer showed him all the best hogs he had. Then they came to the runt, and the customer said, "I believe I'll take that one." The farmer said, "Oh, you don't want that one. That's the worst runt of all the litters." And the customer said, "I sure do." So they load the runt in the pickup truck, and the customer says, "Now, what if I take this pig here from your farm and ride all over this area, telling folks that this is the kind of hogs you raise?" The farmer said, "Well, that's not fair. I have all kinds of nice hogs, and you want to show people the worst one that comes from my farm?" To which the Catholic replied, "If it's fair for you to do that of the church I attend, isn't it fair for me to do that of your farm?" In today's gospel, Jesus says, "Why do you notice the splinter in your brother's eye, when you do not perceive the wooden beam in your own? You hypocrite! Remove the wooden beam from your eye first, and then you will see clearly to remove the splinter in your brother's eye." The farmer saw some churchgoers as hypocrites and judged the value of that church by those members. Yet he was blind to his own hypocrisy. He felt it was acceptable for him to judge that church by its weakest members, but it was not acceptable for others to judge his farm by the worst of the hogs. I'd like to draw 3 lessons from this parable of the hogs and the hypocrites. Number 1, we must be careful not to fall into the same hypocrisy as the farmer. It starts like this. We look at the worst politician of the other political party, at the worst CEO of the corporate world, at the worst display of sportsmanship from a student athlete, from the worst immigrant from Mexico, from the worst parent or kid, sour attitude from that other school. And then, like a grocery store food sampler, we make a decision based on that one experience. It's easier that way. It may even make us feel smug, maybe just a tad superior. And we can even be tempted to judge our own church in a similar manner. We can point to a certain hypocrite priest, hypocrite bishop, hypocrite pope, hypocrite churchgoer, hypocrite pro-lifer, acting as if all priests, all bishops, all popes, all strict churchgoers, all pro-lifers are like them. And maybe we have a thin layer of charity to withhold judgment until we encounter more than one hypocrite, or even multiple hypocrites like the farmer did. And a second layer, thin layer of charity to make room for the possibility that they're not all bad, saying most pro-lifers I know go way overboard. It's easier that way. Again, it may even make us feel smug and a bit superior. So be careful of the temptation to fall into the farmer's hypocrisy. Number 2, the The farmer focused on the hypocrites in the pews, but there are also hypocrites in the sanctuary, in the monastery, in the convent, and in the Vatican, just as there are hypocrites all over Washington, D.C. For this reason, the Catholic Church has lost a lot of its moral authority. And there are hypocrites whom we could call by worse names. And in this context, when church leaders correct our personal doctrine or our personal life choices as contrary to Catholic Church teaching, we can feel as though the blind are calling us blind. Jesus said, "Can a blind person guide a blind person? Will not both fall into a pit?" We can be tempted to withdraw. Are we to give up on our involvement in the church like the farmer? We need Jesus. We need his doctrine. We need his sacraments. And let's face it, we need each other. Heaven isn't a series of luxury, solitary confinement chambers. We need to work with each other here on earth, praying and working together for both personal and institutional reform. Number 3, my last point. In Greek, hypocrite means an actor or a stage player. Yes, there are people who play the part while they're on the stage, but live differently in private, a double life or a double standard. Perhaps that describes all of us, at least a sliver, or to use today's gospel terminology, shall I say, at least a splinter. And if we cannot admit our own personal splinters, but are only able to profess our perfection, then there's likely to be some personal blindness in us. Can we excuse ourselves because our hypocrisy is less harmful, saying, "Sure, I have a splinter in my eye, but he has a wooden beam"? We must be careful not simply to point fingers at others, but to pay attention to the other 3 that are pointing right back at ourselves. And we must remember the words of Jesus last Sunday, that our standards for judging and condemning, as well as our standards for giving and forgiving, will come back to us. Quote, "For the measure with which you measure will in return be measured out to you." Brothers and sisters, somehow we need to face the reform needed in our church, as well as our country and our world, without forgetting our own splinters or wooden beams. Somehow we need to face these issues with full justice, without pretending we can pass eternal judgment. Somehow we need to face today's issues without forgetting the value of mercy and the possibility of redemption for all.